In 2019, Patricia Reynolds lived a peaceful life in a quiet suburb with her husband, Henry, and their 19-year-old daughter, Sarah. To anyone looking in, they were the perfect family. Henry, a successful real estate agent, always charming and well-liked; Patricia, a caring mother who made their home feel warm and welcoming; and Sarah, a bright young woman just starting college, full of potential. But beneath this perfect image, Patricia began to sense something was wrong. Over time, Henry's attention towards Sarah seemed to shift in a way that made Patricia uncomfortable. She noticed they were spending more time together, going on errands or outings that felt different from before. At first, Patricia tried to brush it off, thinking it was normal for a father and daughter to be close, but her discomfort grew. Then she found a hotel receipt in Henry's coat pocket. It didn't make sense. Why would he hide it from her? It wasn't the kind of place Henry would usually go, and something felt off. As her doubts deepened, Patricia started to investigate. She looked through Henry's phone when he wasn't around, and what she found broke her heart: text messages between Henry and Sarah that were far from innocent. They were filled with late-night chats and emojis that hinted at something more. Patricia felt like her world had been turned upside down. The man she had trusted, and the daughter she loved, were hiding something unimaginable. She was furious but also heartbroken, unsure of what to do. She couldn't confront them, yet she needed more proof. So she began watching them closely, noting every small sign, every glance or shared moment that seemed too intimate. As days went by, Patricia became a stranger in her own home, consumed by the truth she feared was unfolding. Every smile between Henry and Sarah felt like another betrayal, and she knew she had to face it sooner or later, no matter how much it hurt. One evening, when Henry was out, Patricia decided it was time to confront Sarah. She didn't want to show her hand too soon, so she approached her carefully. Sitting at the kitchen table where they'd shared so many meals, Patricia called Sarah over. "Sarah," Patricia began, her voice shaky despite her attempts to stay calm, "I've noticed you and your dad have been spending a lot of time together. Is there something you want to tell me?" Sarah looked startled but quickly shrugged it off. "No, Mum, we're just close. He's helping me with stuff." Patricia forced a smile, her heart breaking more. She could tell Sarah was hiding something but didn't press further. "Just remember," she said softly, squeezing her daughter's hand, "you can tell me anything." Sarah nodded, but her face stayed guarded. As she walked away, Patricia's unease deepened. The next day, Patricia decided she needed to act. She followed Henry, claiming she had a nearby doctor's appointment. Parking her car a few blocks away from his office, she waited, watching as he left around lunchtime. Her heart pounded as she followed him from a distance. He drove across town, and Patricia wasn't sure what she expected, but she had to see for herself. To her shock, Henry pulled into the parking lot of a hotel, the same one from the bill she'd found. She watched him go inside, his behavior nervous. Patricia's stomach churned, hoping there was some explanation. But then she saw Sarah. Her daughter approached Henry, and after a brief, knowing glance, they walked inside together. Patricia felt sick. There was no escaping the truth now. She drove home in a daze, a storm of emotions swirling inside her: anger, heartbreak, disbelief. She knew she couldn't keep this bottled up. She needed to confront them, demand answers. But as she pulled into the driveway, another thought crossed her mind. A simple confrontation wouldn't be enough. The betrayal cut too deep. That night, Patricia lay awake, her mind racing with plans. Confronting them wouldn't just be about asking questions, it would be about making them understand the depth of her pain. By morning she was calm but resolute. She wouldn't stay silent. When Henry came home that evening, Patricia asked him to join her in the living room. She made sure Sarah was there too, sitting with that innocent look that made Patricia's blood boil. Patricia stood in front of them, her fury barely contained. "I know what's going on," she said, her voice cold. "I know about the two of you." Henry's face went pale, his eyes widening in shock. Sarah looked down, avoiding her mother's stare. The silence in the room was unbearable as Patricia waited for them to speak. Neither Henry nor Sarah spoke. Patricia's voice rose, her composure slipping as she demanded, "Do you have anything to say for yourselves? After everything we've been through, this is how you betray me." Henry finally broke the silence, his voice a whisper. "Patricia, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." "You never meant for this to happen?" Patricia let out a bitter laugh. "Do you think that makes it better? Do you think an apology will fix the fact that you've destroyed our family?" Sarah began to cry, her shoulders trembling. "Mum, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop." Patricia shook her head, unable to process what she was hearing. "I trusted you both. I gave everything to this family, and this is how you repay me." She stood up, pacing as the room seemed to close in around her. The betrayal was suffocating, and she felt an overwhelming need to escape. But she knew she couldn't run from this. She had to face it, to see it through. Without another word, Patricia walked out of the room, leaving Henry and Sarah in silence. She went to the bedroom, closing the door behind her as she struggled to breathe. Her mind raced with images of their secret looks and smiles, the moments they thought she hadn't noticed. Her anger burned deep, but as she sat alone, Patricia realized she was on the verge of something dangerous. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She knew she had a choice: let the anger consume her, or find a way to move forward without them. The days blurred together. Patricia avoided Henry and Sarah, spending hours walking through the neighborhood, trying to process her emotions. She knew she couldn't stay in that house, surrounded by memories of the life they had shared. But she wasn't ready to leave, not yet. One afternoon, Patricia found herself by a small lake in the park. Sitting on a bench, she stared at the water, trying to find peace. She thought about the years she'd spent building a family with Henry, about their dreams. She wondered if any of it had been real, or if it had all been a lie. As she sat there, Patricia made a decision. She would leave, walk away from the wreckage of their broken family and start over. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she couldn't stay in a place filled with so much pain. That night, Patricia packed her bags. She didn't say goodbye to Henry or Sarah. There was nothing left to say. She simply walked out of the house and into the unknown, leaving behind the life she had once known and the people who had betrayed her. Patricia didn't look back, didn't let herself feel the pain of what she had left behind. She kept walking, determined to find a new path, a new beginning. A few hours away, she settled in a quiet town surrounded by rolling hills and tree-lined streets, so different from the suburb she once called home. She found a small, modest apartment on the edge of town, a simple space that symbolized her chance to start over. At first, the days felt strange, empty, as if she were living someone else's life. But Patricia knew this was the only way forward. She found a job at a quaint little bookstore owned by a kind woman named Marie. From the start, Marie seemed to sense that Patricia was running from something painful, but she never pried. Instead, she offered Patricia a friendly smile, quiet acceptance, and a listening ear whenever needed. The bookstore became Patricia's sanctuary, a place where the scent of old books and the comfort of well-worn pages soothed her soul. Despite her gratitude for the new start, Patricia's nights were long, filled with restless thoughts. She would replay the past, wondering if there was anything she could have done differently to stop the devastation. A deep sadness lingered for the life and family she had lost, but she also felt a strange sense of relief, as if a weight had finally been lifted from her shoulders. One afternoon, while shelving books, Patricia received a call from an old friend, Linda. She hadn't spoken to Linda since she left town and was surprised to hear her voice. After exchanging pleasantries, Linda's tone shifted. "Patricia, are you okay? I heard about Henry and Sarah." Patricia's heart sank. She hadn't expected news of the affair to reach others so quickly, and the betrayal felt fresh all over again. "Yes," Patricia said, steadying her voice. "I'm managing. I just needed to get away." Linda paused. "I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you're going through. If you ever need to talk, I'm here." After the call, Patricia sat in the quiet bookstore, realizing her past had followed her, even here. She felt anger and sadness, but also a renewed resolve to build a life that was hers alone. She couldn't change what had happened, but she could control where she was going. In the weeks that followed, Patricia focused on rebuilding. She created new routines, found peace in small moments, and learned to find joy in her new surroundings. But despite the progress she made, there was an unresolved tension, a lingering feeling of unfinished business. A part of her needed closure, a final confrontation with Henry and Sarah. She considered writing a letter, pouring out all the emotions she had kept buried since she left. Yet every time she picked up the pen, the words wouldn't come. Frustrated, she would set it down, unsure if she was ready to face the past. Then, one evening, Patricia received an email. It was from Sarah. Her heart raced as she stared at the screen, unsure if she should open it. After a few moments of hesitation, she took a deep breath and clicked on the message. Sarah's words were short but filled with regret. She apologized deeply, expressing how lost and confused she had been. Sarah admitted she had been in pain since Patricia's departure. She didn't ask for forgiveness. It was clear she knew the damage was beyond repair. Instead, Sarah simply acknowledged the hurt she had caused and how deeply she regretted it. Patricia sat there, rereading the message. For the first time, she didn't feel anger or bitterness. Just a quiet sense of understanding, perhaps the beginning of closure. She had been searching for. Patricia poured her thoughts into the pages of her notebook. She found the act of writing cathartic. Each word she penned seemed to release a piece of the pain she had been holding onto for so long. She wrote about the betrayal, the heartache, and the sense of loss, but also about her strength, her resilience, and the quiet moments of peace she had found in her new life. With every entry, Patricia was reclaiming her story, rewriting her narrative on her own terms. She was no longer the victim of her past, but the author of her future. The more she wrote, the more she felt a sense of freedom, as though the weight of her past was finally lifting. In time, Patricia came to see her journey not as one of loss, but of rebirth. She had survived a devastating betrayal, walked away from the life she had known, and built something new for herself. And though the scars of the past would always remain, they no longer defined her. They were simply a part of her story, a story of survival, growth, and ultimately of hope. Patricia had found her peace, and with that peace came a new beginning. Patricia's journey from betrayal to healing, and ultimately finding a sense of purpose, highlights her incredible resilience. By sharing her story, she not only found closure for herself, but also became a beacon of hope for others who faced similar struggles. Her transformation is a powerful testament to how, even in the face of profound pain, it's possible to rebuild a life filled with meaning and strength. That Patricia stood on the threshold of her new life, so no longer shackled by the betrayal that once shattered her world. Instead, she felt a quiet, steadfast strength that had emerged from the ashes of her past. She had faced the darkness, walked through the fire, and emerged not untouched, but transformed. Her scars, once symbols of her pain, had become marks of her resilience, reminding her of the journey she had survived and the strength she had cultivated along the way. As she looked out at the possibilities ahead, Patricia felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She was no longer defined by what had happened to her, but by how she had chosen to rise from it. The future, though uncertain, was filled with promise. She knew that challenges would come, but she also knew she had the courage to meet them head-on. Patricia had learned one of life's most important lessons, that no matter how broken we may feel, there is always the possibility of healing and growth. She had rebuilt herself from the ground up, and now, as she took her first steps into the unknown, she carried with her the unshakable knowledge that she was stronger than anything that had once threatened to break her. And with that strength, Patricia knew she could face whatever the future held, ready to embrace the new chapter of her life with open arms.